May I be excused?
You haven't touched your meal.
Food you can eat without teeth. My favorite.
Sometimes I miss Dad's cooking. Sorry, Mum.
Sometimes I do too. I've washed your uniforms for Monday. Excited? How are you feeling, Mom?
It's like you said. There's no changing it. Can I please go now?
Just eat.
I don't feel well.
Cramps?
Gross. No, I want to be alone.
Oh, that's new for you.
Oh, shut up, Till, you moron.
Molly,
What?
don't speak to her like that.
Sorry.
Don't speak to me like that either.
Oh, what, Mum?
Do you have any manners?
Do you even like me? Do you? Do you?
I'm your mother, Molly. I'm not your friend. It doesn't matter if I like you.
Power surge detected.
Hey, is that Henry?
Systems back online.
Hey folks, and welcome to this week's News and Community Spotlight. Have you been enjoying Unreal Education Week? What is not to enjoy with a week full of live Q&As, fresh learning materials, spotlights, and more, all dedicated to students, educators, and future masters of the Unreal Engine ecosystem. Head to the feed to learn how Rookie Award-nominated school, Howest University, supplements their students' game development education with a unique festival that explores the crossover of game engines and entertainment. Speaking of entertainment, California College of the Arts is turning students into thoughtful world builders with inclusivity in mind, allowing them to create virtual worlds that can be joyful experiences that speak to people from all walks of life. Are you an educator? Start incorporating Unreal Engine into your curriculum with the latest iteration of Epic Games' Unreal Learning Kit that teaches students about physics animation in a fun way. Unreal Engine 5 and its latest features have ushered in the next wave of lighting tools for game devs. So how can students and educators start taking advantage of them? We've got a free guide that answers those questions and more. Journey to the feed to grab it. While you're there, dive into the stats and stories that tell the tale of real-time technology in 2022 and our journey toward a future with virtual worlds and interactive 3D experiences. This lumber town, situated in the lower drylands along the river coming down from the mountains, hosts the workers and residents of Northwood. Ride over to the Unreal Marketplace and explore the learning project containing unique building structures, unlimited modular combinations, VFX and fluid simulation exploration, set-dressed interiors, and more. Now for this week's Community Spotlights. From the 2021 Epic Mega Jam finalist team comes the inspiring development from a prototype jam game to a cute 3D platformer where you play as Botty, a brave and adorable data bot on a quest to save the cyber world of Byteland from bugs, viruses, and glitches, solo and with your friends. Wishlist Botty, Byteland Overclocked by Purple Ray Studio on Steam. 2035. An American general makes a tempting offer to a convict. If he accepts and carries out the mission, he can regain his freedom. The task will take him 60 years into the past in an experimental time machine to the days of US President Gerald Ford. Will he survive? Will he complete the mission? Will he be the fortunate son? Follow the production of the 3D animated short movie The Fortunate Son by Daniel Magyar on the Unreal Engine forums. Home cleaning inspired by Robot Wars comes Broombot Battlegrounds by the Cleanup Kings, where you and up to 3 other players take control of cute but dangerous home cleaning robots. With knives, forks, and random dangerously pointy household items strapped on, dash, jump, and drift through 14 themed maps and 3 intense game modes, and pop your opponent's dust balloon and claim victory as the ultimate cleaning machine. Wishlist on Steam. Thanks for watching. Have an epic week.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Inside Unreal, a weekly show where we learn, explore, and celebrate everything Unreal. I am your host, Tina, and today we are going to be going over the incredible, newly available Old West Learning Project, as well as some other exciting stuff that occurred around the creation and release of this project. But before we dive into that topic a little bit further, I would like to introduce our incredible guests for the day. So first off, let's start with you, Clinton. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yeah, happy to. Thanks for having me. My name is Clinton Crumpler. I'm the studio head and art director at Decagon Studios. And we're essentially an outsourced studio, mostly focused on Unreal. And then we've had the opportunity to work with Epic on some awesome educational content that we'll be showcasing today.
Very cool. Very excited to have you here. Thank you so much. And then next up, we have Cole. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Tina. I'm Cole, and I am the lead for the Epic Online Learning team here at Epic, and we take care of a lot of the content you see on the Epic developer community, and hopefully help with a lot of the learning that everyone is doing when trying to conquer Unreal Engine.
Well, I know if nothing else, it helps me. So there's that.
Yeah, I've learned quite a bit of the engine myself, so.
Yeah, it's a great resource. And then last, but certainly not least, we have Matthew. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm Matthew, or Matt, and I'm an instructor, Epic Online Learning. And there's nothing really to say. I do learning stuff. I make learning good. That's my job. Honestly, that's my job. I work with Cole and everyone else at Epic Online, work with everyone else in Epic, and we just try to make the best learning content so people have the least amount of friction, the most amount of success, and then continually learn. And then Cole watches my videos and she learns, and then she tells me what I did wrong, and then I fix it, and then I learn. And it's just a never-ending learning cycle of learning.
See, it's learning for everyone. It's a good thing.
That's the hope and dream.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Cole, would you like to kick us off today? Do you want to tell us a little bit more about the project and kind of the start of all this?
Yeah, so Clinton started actually as an author for us, and part of that was creating the Northwood project for his course, and it kind of evolved from there. We used it in a couple of different courses, and it's kind of grown organically, and I'll let Clinton actually talk through the process on all of the changes it's gone through and the evolution in just a few minutes. But we realized it would be a great resource just overall for our learners. And so the marketplace team has been really, really great to us and to our learners in general, and was gracious enough to let us put a whole bunch of learning content up, but also to buy the distribution rights for a whole bunch of asset packs to go along with it so that we could provide them to learners so that when they were trying to learn the engine, they had a nice project that they could get into and asset packs to go along with it. Because what we realized was learners would try to do stuff but not have things to do anything with. So trying to learn the engine, but they want to go make a great game. We're like, but I have gray boxes, or I have really sad looking tables, or, like the starter content, which is great as a starter. But when you have been out there playing all the really cool games, you're like, I want to go make a really cool game too. And I don't know how to make all that stuff. So we wanted
Right.
something that looked really, really special and kind of matched that so that when you were starting out, you still felt like you could really make special stuff. And so we were hoping that we kind of captured that with the assets that Clinton made for us. The Western project itself is really, really amazing looking, but then the asset packs that you can bring in and play around with, it gives you a chance to do really cool things as you're learning, and it gives you a safe space to do that in, or at least that's our hope. So you get to learn and not feel like, oh, it's just like a gray boxed out, like I'm still at like the learning stage. You get to do learning, but with really, really cool looking stuff. So that was kind of the hope and dream with it. And the marketplace team has been so helpful to us in trying to help make that possible. We can't thank them enough.
Yeah,
They didn't want to be here with
absolutely.
us today because they're like, no, we
Shame,
don't have
shame.
enough. Yeah, we don't have enough to say. I think they're camera shy. But I wanted to make sure that we gave them credit because they really are. They do so much, and they're kind of unsung heroes, I think, in a lot of ways. So
Yeah,
thank you
total
guys.
rock stars for sure.
Yeah.
And I absolutely agree. I do feel like, especially when you're first getting into the engine, I feel like being able to see something that matches the vision in your head is incredibly fulfilling and really helps them want to continue the learning journey and keep going forward instead of just feeling like, well, I'm a beginner and it definitely looks like I'm a beginner. I feel like it really
Yeah.
helps push the idea.
Yeah, and I will never match the artistic stylings of Clinton, no matter how many years I try, because it's just not my skill set. But at least with this as assets that we've got, I can at least pretend for a little bit and build my other skills. So there's that.
Yes, we can siphon your abilities, Clinton, for a little bit just for ourselves.
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, speaking of Clinton and your incredible work and all of the things that you've done, would you like to walk us through kind of the development of the project overall and how that's evolved over time?
Yeah, for sure. So when we initially started, it was just like Cole was saying, it was kind of just a opening to understanding some learning objectives. So there's already a few videos that have come out with Epic Learning that all kind of they call kind of have central ideas in which we integrated into this project as well. But that's like everything from learning how environment artists work with level designers and how you yourself can like basically go from like knowing very little in Unreal to kind of like even just starting to understand how modular forms work and understanding how texturing works and materials. And we try to really just try to hit a lot of different topics that people are really interested in, and just creating a lot of showcase areas in which you could kind of really experiment and see either how you could add to the scene or just really take away any knowledge you can get. I know when I was first starting initially with Unreal, honestly one of my biggest ways that I learned so much of the tech and the tool itself was just looking at some of the projects that were released like really early on with like even Unreal 3 and some of the stuff like that. And that really just kind of allowed me to understand materials and just understanding like how to go about breaking down scenes. And it just really was probably just me being a visual learner and a lot of artists as well. It really helped me just kind of understand right away, which is having that hands-on example. And we're kind of hoping this is going to do the same for those continuing in the same trend where they're going to be able to open this and kind of see right away, okay, hey, this is how this material is made. I can kind of like reverse engineer it to understand, okay, here's what he was doing here, or here's what they were trying to achieve here, and here's how they were able to get that certain look or whatnot. And then the other thing is just kind of really understanding how to go beyond just kind of simple assets like props and things like that. a lot of people start with that kind of stuff, and then they get to the point where they're like, oh, well, what do I do now? Like, I understand how to make a simple asset, but like, what's next steps, and how do I get it into the engine, and what does that mean for me? And so trying to really push beyond like just kind of initial steps and kind of how you can go through the entire gamut of understanding, from beginning of a simple asset to, full on world development, understanding landscapes, buildings, structures, skies, all sorts of stuff. And so we try to incorporate a lot of that within the project that we have here for today.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is just the best crash course any artist could ever ask for. Getting the whole understanding of just environment art and prop design and placement and all of that it's an incredibly useful tool. So thank you so much for sharing just that information and your talents with us and allowing new users of Unreal to really step up their game.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
And
happy to.
it looks really, really pretty. If Clinton wants to show it off a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Let's show it off. Let's take a look. Whenever you guys are ready, I'm happy to.
I haven't seen anybody fly through it quite as beautifully as he manages to.
So elegant finger maneuver. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, so this is kind of a little bit of a showcase. I'll kind of fly around a little slowly here so you guys can first kind of see the overall scene. Really, we try to kind of build a space in what you might see in a typical game level. Modern day kind of equivalent to current production. You can see it's quite a large space that you can explore here, and we try to hit on all sorts of things. Things that people haven't had a lot of experience with. Like, okay, so what if I have a small scene? Like, how do I make it seem much more vast, or how do I bring interest to the space in which I'm developing, or how do I make things feel consistent within a space as well too. And so all of those kind of things we kind of try to elaborate within here, and also just like the nitty gritty and just really kind of looking at individual spaces and assets. And there's already 3 lessons right now on Epic Learning that cover a lot of this initial space right here, where we talk about like building general modular structures. We talk about landscapes. We talk about all sorts of stuff with materials and things of that nature. So those are available right now to check out right away as well. And then we also have a few more that are going to be coming out that are going to continue to elaborate on a lot of the things that we developed and talk about a little bit more of the advanced skill sets and things that we kind of went through in terms of like developing the road system and understanding how to like blend megascan assets into the landscape. But let me just go ahead and quickly drop down here. And you can see in this demo, we even have it set up so you can kind of even just quickly run around and see what it looks like. It'll take a second for the grass to spawn in as we're using landscape-based spawn foliage for the ground. But you can see now it's coming in here, and we have it set up so you can pretty much explore any of the area to kind of understand, like not only just like the artistic aspect of it, but also just ensuring that, having proper collisions and stuff, and proper light maps and understanding how to light the space and how things could be appropriately set up, just to ensure that you're not only being able to understand the tools and what you're using here, but you're also going to have all the tools and knowledge that you gain here. It's going to be very transversable to any kind of industry that you're going to be working in, whether that be games or any kind of other production that would be using Unreal. And that's really the most important thing, is that when we're trying to teach these skills, it's not so much about, how do I just do a one-off thing and that's it? Like, a lot of people will sometimes be like, okay, cool, I know how to do this one thing, and now what do I do? And so this scene was really to try to promote more of a general understanding of like, okay, I see how it's being applied here, but now how do I apply that to other aspects? Like, how do I make materials that can work for every building and not just the one? Or how do I make assets that have more flexibility to use than beyond the initial kind of scope of the project? And so really kind of having a lot of pre-planning and foresight to understand like what that means to production, and how that can really impact how you go about creating your scenes overall. Yeah, it's quite expansive overall. Like, we have it going, I think there's over 9 buildings total. We have almost, I think, probably about 50% or more of the space is explorable in terms of like, walking around and checking things out. Like, you can walk into the building here and, see the lumber mill itself. And there's just a ton of assets to use here as well, too, as Cole was saying. With this pack, we've included all the assets from the Western sets that were just recently released this week. And those are all free to download. And you can either download the package itself, which is basically the entire environment that includes all of those assets. Some of them down-res within the project so that you could basically get a nice performant project. Or if you're like, no, I just want to go straight for the assets and the props themselves and use those into a scene for whatever learning needs you have or your project needs. Those are there as well, and those all include nanite and low poly version of those in 4K textures. So basically, you have a lot of flexibility with all these sets that are being released to kind of use it to really whatever your kind of hopes and desires as to whatever you want to make from it. So yeah, our hopes is to like, this isn't the end all be all to kind of seeing this scene. We want to see other people take this and expand upon it, change it dramatically, make their own environments. Even designers and gameplay artists and things of that nature. It's great to see how can you design a gameplay experience in this space as well. How can you design vis effects from the water? How can you design so maybe some kind of Western standoff with like an actual interaction between characters. Like there's so many ways in which we felt like this space could be used to really just promote a lot of different styles of learning. And then also whatever you're actually trying to learn in Unreal, this can be an easy thing to apply to the scene right away. So Cole was saying you're not just looking at a gray box, because it can feel a bit frustrating when you're trying to learn a new engine or a new tool and you're just like looking at a bunch of blocks that are just so gray. You're like, well, this is cool, but I don't really feel like I achieved a lot today. But when you're actually like getting in here and seeing, like how can I make such a great impact or a huge impact in the scene with a few easy changes and steps and applying those assets and using those throughout the scene to really, promote a completely different visual or, really trying to achieve whatever it is you are after creatively while using the scene.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is first, I'm a little awestruck and a little out of words just because it's so beautiful, which is very rare for me. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, this is absolutely gorgeous work, and I feel like there is so much potential for learning from just running around this level and being able to experience it and really dive in and see the care taken and how it was built and the methods in doing so. But speaking of learning, I was wondering if you wouldn't mind kind of talking about the process of iterating this level and how maybe feedback from the studio even could have affected that, just so that the viewers know this wasn't necessarily built in just one go. What was the,
Sure, yeah.
the process of actually building this up?
Of course, definitely. Like I said, Decagon's an outsourced studio, so we had a bunch of artists that, not just me, that worked on this. A lot of artists really took time and effort to make sure that each aspect that they were responsible for looked its best. And then also as a team, we were ensuring that basically, just like a normal production scenario, we were working with each other to ensure that if my piece is made for a modular set, like how can I reuse aspects that maybe John made or Ashley made, and how can we make sure that those are all incorporated together to make the final scene? And I think that was a really important not aspect just for us, but also for the viewer to see like it really is a team effort to make something of this scale and nature. But to that point, it's like none of the things that we did here couldn't be learned as a skill set as an individual artist with Unreal. Given the amount of time, you could easily create something just as robust and grand, given that you kind of polish those skills and understand those aspects. But yeah, I mean, I think with any project or anything artistic, especially, there's always going to be creative feedback and kind of back and forth on this. And while I kind of provided more feedback on art direction and helping set up the level, each artist was given a certain thing that they wanted to focus on or work on, and then through that we had an iterative process, whether it be through what the learning goal was and how we were trying to achieve that and display that through what it is we actually made. So like for instance, with the modular structures here, there may be sometimes other ways and you could go about building a building, but for this particular one, we really wanted to demonstrate and showcase like what's the simplest and most direct way a learner can understand what's modular. What does that even mean? Like how can you go about constructing that set, and how can you make something that looks good in the end while still kind of confining yourself to those rule sets and kind of the modular workflow and what you want to find yourself to, just to make the least amount of work for yourself as possible, but also producing the most amazing end result. That's a really big key in modular workflow and design. And so beyond that, also just like optimization was a big thing as well too. Like not only did we ensure that when we're going through the process that we're checking on, does the asset look good? We're also wanting to make sure and talk about throughout the lessons that we talk about, is this going to be shippable? Is this a product that you would actually be able to see in a game that would actually be a working product? And I think it's another really important thing to remember as well too, because as a learner, you're always going to go into a project being like, okay, cool, I now understand how to make this. but what does that mean when it go into further steps as to understanding furthering my career as to like how do I use this into going into a production scenario or going into a full-fledged environment artist scenario in which I find myself in. And so kind of looking through how we went about constructing that and really kind of being aware of like how can we optimize this to make it both usable, both user friendly, and also making it really kind of easy for the learner to kind of pick up and digest and really kind of break down the steps in which we also took. And so the other really cool thing in this particular project is that there are Megascan usage, and we do talk about like how you can really integrate that into your scene as well too, which I think is really important for learners that I teach personally as well too classes in Unreal, and I think it's really important when you're learning Unreal to, like Cole said, like leverage the things around you. Like no one's going to go in your first day of any job as an environment artist or any kind of production and say, cool, all right, reinvent the wheel, go. Like that's never going to happen. That's always going to be so many resources you have available to you. And especially with Unreal Engine, there's just so many things that you can pull from, whether it be, learning content, marketplace content that's been promoted for free, Megascan's content, Sketchfab. There's just so many ways in which you can access that content now and really easily integrate it into your project in Unreal. And I think this is another great example of how that was kind of used in this project, where not only were we developing these prop sets to be able to be used in them that could be used in any project, but we're also pulling from Megascans and other ways in which we could incorporate that information to really just make something that feels cohesive. Because while you are using those resources, the really big thing at the very end is to make sure, does it feel good together? Does it feel like it's a cohesive project? Does it feel like something that is a complete project to someone opening this up? Or does it feel like it's kind of been piecemeal together and really trying to establish the identity of Northwoods, the town or whatnot? And so I think that was another really important aspect to the iterative process that we just had to go through to really make sure that all those kind of steps kind of flowed together to really produce the final result.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's some great insight. Thank you so much for that. And I think that's
Yeah.
it's good information for people who are looking into kind of getting more into this space to have. Because I think it can be a little intimidating maybe at first to download and pull up this project and fly through it and think, oh my God, I will never be able to do this exact thing. So knowing that there's process to it, I think is helpful.
Yeah, I think that's definitely key to remember too. It's like, nothing is built in a day. And I think, it all comes through a cumulative experience of all the people that were involved to make a big project like this. But that doesn't mean that you can't easily make a smaller version of this project that looks just as wonderful and beautiful, and then actually is very usable in a portfolio or, through your own demonstration of your Unreal skill set. And I think that's really important to remember. Like, don't feel like it's beyond you at any point or stage. Like everyone has to learn, and there's always going to be different steps in which you learn, and the rate in which that that learning experience goes throughout, as you're creating these scenes or whatever scene you decide to create. So definitely don't feel intimidated. I know it can be intimidating when you're first opening up and starting, but yeah, I think there's always room to kind of explore and understand and kind of take things step by step for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, there's so many questions coming in from chat about this particular level, so I'm going to give them a minute so we can round them all up, and I figure we can kind of circle back onto this and really dig into some of the aspects of this project in particular that they're interested in hearing
Sure.
about if you're up for that.
Yeah, that sounds great.
But awesome. Then next up, I want to hand it over to Matt for a little bit here. I was wondering if you would be open to talking about how you created the tips tutorial and where the inspiration for all of that came from.
There's the unmute button. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, you can see here, we're all doing this virtually, and that's kind of how everything works nowadays. I mean, it is what it is. We're all over the place. And Clinton brought up a lot of good points. Learning's iterative. Learning is piecemeal. You learn over time. You don't do everything all at once. And those things, believe it or not everyone knows. A lot of people are just like, how do I do it all at once? I want to recreate Fortnite in Unreal Engine. I want to make a recreation of some old game I used to play on the Nintendo. And it's going to be this grand scheme. But that doesn't help you learn. That might help you maybe accomplish something if you brute force through it, but you're not really going to learn. And you also have a much higher chance of just hitting that wall, just head on. and stopping because I need this animation perfect. I need to make my character crouch, but I don't know how to make him crouch. And you just spend a week making the character crouch instead of just like moving on to the next part or doing something else. And then you get stuck, you get frustrated, you give up. Our goal on the Epic Online Learning team is to help you learn. And if you can't learn, you're not going to stick with the project and you're not going to make really cool stuff. We want to help you make cool stuff. I like making cool stuff. Clinton made that really ridiculously cool scene. I mean, like, because I'm not an artist. So, like, I got to open that up and play with it and do some of the stuff and, like, the tips and tricks and stuff. And I'm just like, cool. I wouldn't even know where to start. Honestly, I like not a clue. I just like this is a really cool thing. I ran through it. I browsed through it. I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. Great background content for learning material, but I could never recreate this. Even if I tried, I could probably never recreate it. I'm just not that type of person. But that's important to know. I know my limitations. I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at. I don't try to force my square peg into a round hole trying to learn art. I rely on people like Clinton to give us the good art we can use for when I'm creating stuff. So with this stuff in mind, we're like, how can we help people learn? We're going to give them these resources. They're going to have content we create for our Epic developer community site. But where do they start? How do they start? What do they do? Well, we could write out a document, we could write out a blog, we could make a tutorial on making tutorials, but a lot of the time it's not as friendly or as personal. So we're like, how can we make this personal? So Cole was like, oh, let's do it like a fireside chat. We'll do it side by side and we'll chat and we'll just casually talk about learning tips and tricks, which is great, except we're literally on the opposite sides of the United States. I'm on one side, she's on the other.
It's
And I'd
not
rather not drive all the way
quite.
across again.
It's
It's
not
pretty
quite
darn
the opposite.
close.
I'm one state away from the exact opposite coast.
Okay, it's pretty darn
Details.
close. So yeah, so like, well, can we do it virtually? Like we do it in Zoom. We'll just record a Zoom chat, but it's not personal. Again, how could we make this personal? And I
It's
had
ugly.
a bright, I had a bright idea, like I generally do, which is more of, ooh, we could do this, and then it snowballs into just hell on earth. Why don't we do it virtually? We have virtual production stuff. Let's see if we could do it. So we just literally opened up the virtual production project, the set that Epic has as one of their learning samples. I looked through it. I'm like, I wonder if we could do this. So we went to the first part. We made a plan. Can we do this? Can we do this? What do we need to do this? We wrote out our rough idea, and then I was like, okay, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm not an artist. I guess I should learn. So actually on the EDC, we have 3 different courses. We have independent filmmaking with Unreal Engine, intro to virtual cinematography, and a movie render queue essentials. The last one being how you get the stuff out of the engine into your editing program. That's kind of convenient. Let me watch those. So I watched those, went through the community itself, like Discord and Reddit and Facebook, see what other people are doing, looked through the forums on our EDC, checked out other community tutorials on how to do things. I'm like, I think we could do this. So then the next part was we broke it down. We've got a plan. We want to make this really cool thing. But how do we actually do it? Broke it down. Well, we need to capture video. Well, we got Zoom, we got cameras. We can go from there. Need to make a set. Need to figure out how to get the videos into the set. Need to figure out how to set up the camera stuff. Need to set up the sequencer. It seems like it's a lot, but it's not when it's we do this, and then we do this, and then we do this, and then we do this. And the nice thing is because it's broken down, maybe I get stuck on a certain part. I can just push it to the side. I still know I have other things to build at the same time. The nice thing in development, game development, virtual production development, a lot of it isn't linear. You can do the different parts and then bring them together at the end, which is really nice because I got stuck a couple times because I don't know what I'm doing. So if you want, let me hide my camera here, and if you want, we can go to streaming, and I can walk you through a little bit more of an iterative process on what we did.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So I'll switch over to streaming hopefully in a second. Maybe,
We'll get there.
possibly.
No, just
Maybe.
little kitten and little me. That's fun.
Yep.
Oh, I think you need to hide our main window here, and then we'll be able to.
Oh, am I sharing the? Oh, yeah. See, technology. It's hard.
Technology. It's the worst sometimes. It's the best and the
Yeah.
worst.
Yeah. But I should be set up for. Oh, yeah. There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah. What do you know? Something I need to learn how to do. There we go. Okay. So we've got a plan. We've broken it down. Now I need to actually implement it. And this is our really cool virtual production, virtual studio setup. And I think is it working okay? It seems like the video might be having issues.
Hmm.
Hopefully it's, oh no. We practiced and then this, do we look like we're
Without
having
fail.
technical issues? Well, I'm going to do my best to power through this and hopefully we can get it updated. If not, we'll switch back and I'll just use hand gestures and puppets.
There we go. Shadow puppets.
Yeah. So we have a virtual studio set. And it's really cool. It's really robust. It's got some videos built in. All of the stuff, the core technology, the core learning stuff. I use stuff a lot. You can just hopefully you guys roll with it. I use stuff because stuff is my favorite word because everything's stuff. I could break down this project into my smaller parts. I have an area, maybe I could set up as a virtual studio. I have some video plates that I could use as a learning basis for our video plates, our little talking heads. I have some background set up. I have some lights. It's really cool. It's a bit more than I would like because it's a bit noisy. And the nice thing is there is other studios in here. So I found access to Studio C, and Studio C is a nice little clear, bright, round studio that I thought would be perfect because I could then set up a desk and I could set up some pictures. So I broke it down and like now I have where we're going to do it at. This is cool. What do I need to do next? I started organizing things. I made our studio. So I went and I just simply updated the existing studio and tried to give it a little more personality. Threw our logo on there, changed it to match the color scheme that we wanted. I went ahead and put in a little desk that I can put our characters behind. So while I was doing this, I'm also learning how to do the sequencer stuff, how to do the media plates. But the nice thing is I can, I've got epic content up on one screen, watching and learning, while I'm also just doing grunt work and setting up our design. A little bit of multitasking there. But then it got to the point where I needed to actually figure out how to get the content into the engine and then work with the content with the engine. Using cinematic cameras, because again, we're using virtual production, might as well take advantage of the fact it's all digital. We can do whatever we want. I set up 3 cameras in kind of like a traditional setup where you have a wide 2-shot for your 2 people, your 2 talking people, and then a left zoom in and a right zoom in. So that way I could easily record the 3 different cameras. It's virtual. I don't need to physically have 50 cameras. I can just have as many as I want. I can switch back and forth. It's great. Take advantage of virtual. That's the entire point. So I've got it set up. I need to get media plates in. The nice thing is with the new version of 5.1 and higher for Unreal Engine, you can easily just take video, drag it into the engine, and it'll automatically set everything up for you. It's a really nice feature. So I have a left and a right plate, which are currently hidden now because I don't actually have the video loaded up. But I could set them up in a way with sequencer. So we'll go to like part 3 here, where you can easily just have talking heads. Up. And since I have the different cameras, I have one locked off to like my left person, one locked off to my right person, and then one for my 2-shot. And I could stage everything up. And you're thinking to yourself, well, that's cool. You've got some really good video you brought in, all professional. No, we just used the cameras we had. We use some free software online just to basically take the actual video itself, if we can find it in here. And the video itself actually is green screened in the background. It's a green video, and we're using the built-in media plate stuff to just grab the virtual green screen and then key it out. Didn't have to do any extra special work. We just used the built-in tools, keyed it right out, and we were able to have a nice, clean image that we could use for our setup. So cool. We've got stuff in. We need stuff out. This is where what went wrong started to rear its ugly head. Mainly, I don't know what I'm doing. And this is where another part comes into play for learning. Practicing and understanding your limitation. You're not going to get it perfect the first time. Don't aim for the stars. Make your scope appropriate. We're making a short little video. It's got a couple cameras, basic background. We've got two people talking back and forth. We're not aiming for fancy digital replacements of humans or any of that other fancy virtual production stuff. I kept it simple because I don't know what I'm doing, and I understand that. And as I do this process, I start learning and I identify what I need to work on, what I can improve on, where my deficiencies are. And one of them is I don't know how Sequencer works. Sequencer is the nonlinear editing system where I can put in things like camera shots, video playback, I can animate things in the background. I can basically control a shot. If you've used something like Final Cut or Camtasia or DaVinci Resolve, it's a nonlinear editing for editing stuff. I use stuff again because you can do anything in here. I can animate stuff. I can put visual effects in here. I have these little media plates in here. You can change the background, which we do at one point, which is actually kind of cool. But I needed to figure out how this worked. One of the goals with Unreal Engine is we want to try to get final pixel output. Basically, you do everything inside of the engine. And then the output, once you send it out, is final pixel. So there's no more needing to bring it into another program and clean up the color correction or color grading or do your different time code cuts and edits. We do everything inside the editor. The engine's possible. The engine is capable of doing that. The person behind the engine, me, is not capable of doing that. So I tried to bite off something more than I could do. I tried to start doing different cuts, different edits, different camera movements inside of the editor. So if we, for example, we pull up the first sequencer, we can see I'm going from like a 2-shot, then I gotta lock the camera, here we go. I go from like a 2-shot to a 1-shot, back to a single 1-shot of a different person, and I try to do the editing inside of sequencer, and it works. But I don't know how it works, so I literally just randomly hit buttons after watching videos and tried to make things work, and it's okay. But it's not perfect. It's not right. And this is something I put on my little checklist of things to learn later. Learn Sequencer, which coincidentally, there may or may not be some courses coming out in the future on Sequencer. That is one of the things we do on our team. We do dog food our products. We look at all of the stuff we've created. We watch the stuff we've created. We look at the feedback from the community. We see where we're deficient and we know what to iterate on and work. And like Clinton mentioned, you're iterating on, the physical projects. We iterate on our learning content as well. We have a first hour with Unreal Engine. We have another one we created for Unreal Engine 5. We'll be updating it again in the future. We'll be updating it with the content that the people think they need to know and that we see they're deficient in terms of learning. Because we want it to be as easy as possible and we want it to be as efficient as possible. So in this case, I don't really know how to use Sequencer properly. I managed to export out one section, but then I can't edit it properly. Transitions are hard. So what I learned over time, so for example, for like part 3, is I simply did the entire thing with one camera, then another camera, and then the third camera. So I had 3 outputs. And then I could use my editing software to combine the 3 and then cut it how I wanted to. In the future, my goal will be to do this inside Sequencer, but considering we set ourselves a really tight time frame to learn this all at once, I called it good enough. Using Movie Render Queue, that was one of the third courses that I watched, we have the ability to output what you see. So everything we see here inside of this locked off camera, if I hit play, this is my output that's going to end up going out to an external source. In this case, Movie Render Queue, we chose to save everything as image sequences. Image sequences give you a nice high quality set of still images that you can combine together back into video. And you don't have to worry about compression artifacts and all that fun stuff. Nice thing is, I had no idea what I was doing with this software before I went into it. I watched one of our courses. The author showed me exactly what I need to do, and I was like, I know what I'm doing now, which is really nice when you don't know what you're doing. You just randomly start hitting buttons and stuff doesn't work. So our goal after that was, okay, we've got some output. Then I use DaVinci Resolve. It's a nice free editing program that can bring in image sequences and turn them into video. So that's when I basically just took those images. These are, if we look at the name, for example, this is 3,000 frames of images, just simply scrubbed into a video sequence. Take those, export those out into a video format, and then I can pull them into my actual nonlinear editing program. So in this case, I'm using Camtasia. We use Camtasia for all of our internal projects, so I'm experienced with it. It's just a normal nonlinear editing. Anything would work. But I used what I knew. Instead of trying to learn something else, yet again, that I don't know, I grabbed something that I knew. And I just took those videos, started syncing up the audio tracks, and I got our nice cut video. The problem with this, though, again, I used... Sorry about that. My headset thought I was dead. Okay, let's try that again. If I'm only talking and no audio is coming out of it, it thinks it shuts off. It's really annoying. So the issue with this is all the cuts are hard coded. I used Unreal Engine to make the cuts, so I can't actually adjust any timing. So that's why we learned with that third set. As soon as I can find it, here we go. I'm going to open up another project here. Once I learned that I should just export out cameras, so like camera A, camera B, camera C, something like a more traditional setup in a regular recording, I just now have my 3 different cameras, and I can mix and match my different cameras in real time on the editor here. And you'll notice this timeline is much more complicated than the other timeline because I was able to insert images and overlays and pictures and do audio mixing and track editing. And this identified the fact that I want to do this inside of Unreal Engine. Sequencer is capable of doing this. I don't know how to do it. I look forward to a future course that shows me how to do this because I don't know how to do it. I don't. So I was able to do it here. And then once that was done, we just exported everything out. And I mean, this was our finished product once it was done. We have a final one. If I can open this up. And the goal of this was to basically, there's a term in the industry called dog fooding, where you are using your own product, which Epic does for all of its products for Unreal Engine. It's what we're doing for learning. We can't teach or show people how to learn very well unless we are constantly trying to be better at that concept, learning better, and watching our own stuff, learning from the mistakes we make, continually trying to improve on the things we're doing. So in the case of this one, our attempt was, how can we show people how to learn better? How can we make it more personal? And that's why we went through this entire process. And the funny part is the tips and tricks that we show you in learning to learn, basically, learning tips and tricks for learning, making a plan, breaking it down, and practicing are exactly what we did in order to make the video to give to everybody, which is the point. Yeah, I think that's it. I'm pretty sure I rambled on for quite a bit here. But yeah, that's what we did. I mean, you saw it. If there's any questions, you can ask. I'm never good at ending these, so we're ending it.
Perfect place as any.
Yeah.
This was great. Everybody loves to learn a little bit more about virtual production, and I think it's helpful to hear that even an industry professional such as yourself may struggle with some of these concepts when they first start with it.
Yep. No, I do struggle with a lot. I mean, I don't know everything. No one knows everything. That's one thing to keep in mind. Honestly, maybe that honestly really needs to be reiterated a lot for learning. I originally, I've been doing this a while, and I'm a programmer by nature. And I originally was like, I want to make games and stuff like that. But of course, with the game, you need art, probably. You need sound, probably. You need lots of other things other than just the tippity tappity typing on the background for the programming. It can't be that hard, right? Watch a couple tutorials, read a couple books. I can do it. No, I can't do it. It's not in my skill set. And as hard as I try, as hard as I hit that wall over and over, I'll read the tutorials, I'll watch the tutorials, I'll follow the steps, I'll recreate exactly what I was shown, but zero knowledge was conveyed to me. Like my brain doesn't retain it because it's not what I want. I don't want to learn it, apparently. I think my brain's like, you don't want to learn that. But it's also like the type of learning, following the ABC courses, following the ones that are do step one, do step two, do step three, finished product. Those are great for getting something done, but it doesn't help you retain the knowledge. It doesn't help you retain the learning, which is what we try to focus on. That's why we have like interactive things. That's why we're trying to show you how we do the things, and we're trying to get you interact, trying to get you to interact with the learning, so that way you're retaining it. And then the practice part is I can do something one way, and you can show me how to do it one way. But that doesn't mean it's the only way to do it. So maybe during the learning process, this course you're watching or whatever training we're giving you, we'll show you the same exact result, but a different way to get to it. So that way you can learn. There's right words here, and I fail at them. I've
We
learned
very
English to
much
learn how to
focus.
do the words.
We focus on the best practices when it comes to learning, making sure that you're actually learning a skill, not just learning how to follow some steps.
Hmm.
There you go. Cole word
Learning is my
good, Matt word bad.
learning is my skill set. The engine is Matt's.
Perfect combination.
We're a nice little dynamic duo.
Yeah. So I hear that in general, lovely Cole here may have thrown quite a lot of new requests at you through this process. I was wondering if you had any kind of just general advice for anyone who might find themselves in a similar position of, either they're working at a studio that's picking up new technologies to include or things like that. Considering that you did have to pick up a couple different new skill sets to be able to go through with this tutorial series that you made. Do you have any advice for other people that are finding themselves in similar positions of needing to pick up some new skill sets and how to approach that particular challenge?
Honestly, you need to identify how you learn. It's the first step. Like I learn I'm old school. We only had books when I first started learning. So you
Mhm.
either read a book or you just dived into it because you had no other choice. You didn't have structured learning, you didn't have assisted learning, you didn't have any of that stuff. Nowadays we have so many options. You should identify what works best for you. Written tutorials, for example, don't work well for me. Usually they don't have enough visual information that I need in order to understand something that the reading just doesn't work for me nowadays. I like watching stuff, I like playing with stuff. So for me, for example, I would see if there is anything on any of the learning community sites, like the EDC, for example, where we're putting all of our stuff. I needed to learn sequencer. Hey, what do you know? I was doing virtual production. We happen to have a virtual production course. During that, I needed to know how to get it out. I learned movie render queue. There was one point where my video plates were smearing. I had text on my shirt during our first takes, and the text would just it went crazy. So I reached out to the community to find out it's because of the anti-aliasing is causing the issue because it was going from frame to frame. I'm not a rendering person. I don't art. So I wouldn't even have guessed unless I reached out to the community and asked them. So I identified what I need to do, figured out the way I learned best, and started learning and then worked with the community. So if you're tasked to learn something, identify very clearly how you would best learn. Hope you can find resources, look for those resources that meet those needs, and identify, make the plan, break it down, and practice. Identify what you need to learn. It's not like, for example, on this one, Cole's like, we're going to make this really cool course on teaching people how to learn Unreal Engine. We want to give them tips and tricks. That's not what I need to learn. We broke that down to all the different steps and then broke those down into what I need to learn for each individual part. That's a big one. Don't overreach, don't overguess, don't over plan. Make a small plan, put it in scope, understand what you need to work on. Don't feel overwhelmed. That's the biggest one. You're only going to feel overwhelmed if you keep it too big, honestly. Break it down even smaller. I need to make a character run. Oh, that seems like it's overwhelming. Break it down even smaller. I need to get input into the character. I need to play an animation. I need to change the speed of the character. And then now you have small little bite-sized things that you can figure out how to do. And then it's not overwhelming. Then you know it.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that's helpful to me, at least in particular, being able to cut things down into smaller pieces. I know I'm definitely one of those people who will look at something as just the whole big project and be extremely intimidated and feel like this is a monumental task that is just not possible. So I think I agree with you. It's very important to be able to decipher how to break it down into those smaller steps.
And also know that you don't have to do it all, especially since there's a big community out there. You can rely on other people's experiences, especially. Like Clinton was mentioned, you have other people, you have other people's experience, you have other people's resources. Learn to use what's available to you. Don't assume it's all on your shoulders, especially when learning. Work with everyone else, because everyone else is not everyone else, but there's a good chance there's other people in the same exact position as you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
In
think
a
that's a
similar vein to that, oh, what were you saying, Cole? Sorry.
I think that's a huge thing, learning to use the resources that are available. Because I think a lot of times we get stuck in like that I'm an island and have to figure everything out on my own and don't realize that there are resources that can help so that it's not just, oh, I have to suffer on my own trying to learn something. If that tutorial doesn't work for you, then there's always another option or another way potentially that you can learn something. Because sometimes a tutorial may not be the way for you to learn something, or a documentation page might not be what you need. Not all of us learn the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. In a similar vein to that idea, actually, I'm going to be throwing a couple questions from chat in here now, if y'all are okay with that. But I did have one question that came up where they were wondering if any of you had suggestions for people who don't learn well from reverse engineering, and how would they be able to approach this learning project and still get something from it?
So on the Epic Dev community, we have tutorials that are built using older versions of that project that actually show you how to utilize it, not reverse engineering, but building it from the ground up in some cases. But also, you can apply, if you're doing a tutorial on materials and you learn something about materials, you can go and use this project itself. Just open up the project and apply the skill that you've learned to the materials in the project. It doesn't have to be a reverse engineering. It can be, I've learned this, now I'm going to go apply it to this project. I've learned how to import things into a project. Let me go and import something into this project. Oh, I want to learn how to set up a scene. I have a project where it's a safe place for you to be able to go and play around and maneuver things and do things without feeling like, oh, I don't have anything that's beautiful to do that with. Because gray boxes are fun, but when you have a box that looks like a crate, it makes you feel a little bit more like excited about what you've done. So now you have a crate that looks cool. So it's just really about applying the skills that you've learned in other places, but doing it in a place where it's a little bit prettier for you to do that. So it's not necessarily everything has to be reverse engineered for you to learn from it. That's one of the options that you have with this project, but it's also about being able to apply things that you're learning in other tutorials and other places, applying it into this project. It's just that it's a place that you can do that with.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other points from either you, Clinton, or Matt about that as well?
I think what Matt was saying was really important earlier, a little bit ago, when he was talking about how, like, when he didn't know anything, or like when he was like trying to figure out like how to use a new tool. I think it's important to iterate that even if you know the tool, you'll often find that even like with this scene we made, I would have built it completely different the next time, and I would have done the same the following time after that. So there's never going to be a time where you're like, I know it. And that's it. That's it. I'm not a learner anymore. I did it, guys. We did it. There's always going to be like, there's so many times where there's going to be points in which you learn something new, or even just add to your own process. So, yeah, like Cole was saying, it's like important to have those resources as well to kind of continue even what you think you might already know, to continue to kind of develop further on that with a lot of the tools and things that we talk about through the learning objectives.
Yeah, I was
Absolutely.
going. Yeah, I was going to say in particular, I've got so many documents open, I can't find it, so I'm just going to give up. Like Cole has mentioned, this Northwood's final learning project had the different iterations as we went through, which me personally, like, I've got to watch all these as it's happened. It's really cool because some of them will just have one or two buildings and the rest is gray box behind you. But it's just because you're talking about, learning Python or animation or AI. It's something that's only dedicated just to the section that's finished. And then later on, there's like implementing UI for level design, and you get to actually go through the gray box and showing you how to set up the objectives. And you're learning in this project that's now a little bit more complete, and you can see the iteration process. So I tend to be fairly well with breaking apart, reverse engineering something to try to figure it out. But since I'm not an artist, it's really hard for me to do that with art stuff, because like I'll open up a complicated material and see this shader math that these people have done, and just my brain doesn't understand how it even works. I can try to recreate it and not understand. I can't reverse engineer it very well. But to Cole's point, it gives you a place that is set up already to play around with. So if you're an artist and you want to learn the shaders or something more, but you can't understand it by reverse engineering, maybe there's a barrel that exists inside of this project, or there's a tree, or there's a wall, or there's something in there that you can do as an artist. You can take your item and bring it into this project, and then you can see how they've set it up, and you can start basically recreating based on their existing working setup, and learn based on doing the practicing part. So you don't reverse engineer it to understand, you basically just duplicate something that exists to try to figure it out step by step on your own. So it's half reverse engineering and more just duplicating to learn, but you have a nice existing established. It's not like for me for art, it's like, how do I make color? I don't know, just dragging stuff. Maybe it works, but if I have Clinton's set, I have something that works. All of this stuff works. I can start recreating it step by step and then see how all the pieces go together because it's all in real time. And then maybe I can understand that way by recreating it. And that's what's good about, this learning project. There's so much stuff in there. It's got VFX, it's got water, it's got lighting, it's got the road system, like he was mentioning, is really cool. It's just a nice little spline road system going through, and got the one of the first things I did was take the water wheel that's in there and try to get it rotating. And if you watch our course, halfway through, I took the wheel into our course and started rotating it in the background because I thought it was really cool.
That was one of my requests. I was like, wouldn't it be so fun if in the background we brought the Western scene on in? And wouldn't it be cool if we had the wagon wheel and it started rotating? And he was like, and wouldn't it be cool if this
Yeah. But
so
I learned, yeah, like I didn't reverse engineer anything. I just grabbed stuff from the Old West and used it as learning material for stuff I was doing because it's nicely set up. That's a good way of looking at it. Don't try to reverse engineer it. Just try to, I mean, honestly, recreate it. That's one way I learn. Maybe they learn that way. They can't reverse engineer it to understand it, but by duplicating it, you can slowly piece it together.
Absolutely. Um, is there any way that I could have all of you kind of demystify the idea of using pre-made assets in a scene? Because I know that there's been some issues before where people have the idea that maybe if they do download something from the marketplace and use those assets, that now it doesn't hold the same value for whatever reason. And I'd love your thoughts on why that's not necessarily the case.
I'll let Clinton do a more appropriate answer because I mean his company, they do stuff like that. They give you the assets to do it. It would be silly for him not to support it. But like, I'm a programmer, and one of the standard things for programming is you have things like Stack Exchange where people have good tested code. You have libraries that are used in every programming language, code that's already working and existing. Why am I going to recreate how to figure out how to subtract two numbers or calculate the number of milliseconds in a date time object when someone else has done it? So it's really standard to get something that's established and working in the programming, genre and reusing it. It's the same thing with art. It's the same thing with assets. And I highly doubt any AAA game doesn't have asset packs or asset libraries or reused assets in them. And the best example is audio. If you start paying attention in games, like especially animals like wolves and things like that, they're not recreated every single time. There's audio packs out there. If you start paying attention, you can hear like door sounds or door creaks or wolves, or there's a really weird one. There's a game called Anarchy Online where there's a little round creature, and I can't remember the name of it, but it makes this weird noise and it's very distinct, but apparently it's a real life animal. And I've heard that sound in other games going forward, and I always think back to that one first time I've heard it. So it's no, it that should be the least of your problem. You should be concentrating on getting your stuff done. That's what you should be concentrating on.
Yeah, I mean, not everyone has the artistic chops or the programming chop. Like, we all have our own different skill sets that we bring to the table. I think it's really a matter of making sure that you credit the appropriate people. Like, you're not just stealing those assets and not giving credit where credit is due in the end, but it shouldn't be, oh, well, I can't use that because I didn't make it. If we had to wait for me to be able to make some arty things with my box of crayons over here, we would never get anything done. Like, that's just the reality of it. I don't have that skill set. Not everyone is going to master every bit of the engine. It's just never going to happen. That's okay. I shouldn't have to wait for me to be able to do that to make a full game. It is perfectly okay. That's what assets are there for. If But go ahead, Clinton. I'll let you speak on it since you are the actual artist with real art tools, not just a Crayola box.
I do feel like, especially like what both y'all said is really true for sure. And then like what Matt was saying about programming, it's been going on for years, but it's only more people are more like aware of it now because it's visual. Like we've had run cycles that have been the same for games. We've had programming that have been the same for games for years. But then suddenly that same barrel was used in Assassin's Creed 1 and Assassin's Creed 2. And we'd be like, wait a minute, you can't be reusing assets here. That's not fair. And it's like, what? Why would we remake this asset that looks good in the first place? And so it's always just a kind of funny scenario that we find ourselves in when something's so much more like visually apparent that it's been repeated, or we've seen it elsewhere, that we become much more aware of it. And I think that's just really what's happened with like asset resales and like asset marketplace and things of that nature, is that people just are more aware of it now. But I think there's just so much to, like, you can't reinvent the wheel. Like games are getting better and better. Productions are getting better and better. Films are getting better and better. And, there's just no way that we could all just be like, okay, guys, new film was based on the last film. Let's just start it all over, guys. Start it all over. New 10-year development cycle. Here we go. And it's just like, why would you do that? And so you just really have to lean into understanding, like, the resources are there to make, the media and the things that we enjoy and entertain ourselves with better and better, right? So why would we not use the resources we have available to us to make those things even more robust and more interesting and more fun to look at and more fun to play? And so, with marketplace and things like that, we now have this space in which, I've seen it happen so many times. That's honestly some of our, favorite clients that we work with are people that are on much smaller teams that are like, look, I'm really interested in making this amazing game. I'm using Unreal and I'm really excited about this project I want to do, but there's just no way I could produce this much assets, this many content, this many levels within this amount of time. I need someone to help me do this to be able to achieve my vision or my goal or whatever it is I'm trying to do on my team. And that's what, these assets and those things are for, is that you're able to achieve so much more within the time that you have available at a much higher quality than you could ever achieve on your own. Like, no one can just go through and just be like, let me just go remake everything right now, because you'll never be able to get to the actual point in which you want to make, which is your final, outcome and your result. So really just kind of, removing that disillusion of like, this has never been done before. Why were people doing it? Like, every studio I've worked at has had a game library. And oftentimes that game library is shared with other studios in the same like parent company. So like, without saying names, you might be working with X studio that has already made a barrel. So I'm just going to use that barrel in our game as well. And that's going to solve that issue. So you just have to be aware that it happens all the time. And whether people realize it or not, because they might be new to understanding that process, that's fine. Just really be objective and don't be like quick to be like, well, other people say this, I'm just going to believe that, like asset use and things like that is terrible. And it's like, well, why do people believe that? And why do you now believe that? And so really just kind of observing your own observation about like making those conclusions for yourself, and just realizing like there's so much more worth to being more open and understanding about like the usage of those assets comparatively to those that are much more restrictive, where you're just really honestly blocking yourself from tons of really great content and oftentimes like really available and free content for the most part. And so there's just so many more uses that you'll find if you have opened your mind about that whole process, for sure.
It's also, I think, a
I'm
credit
gonna.
to the artist who makes the assets that you're using. But I mean, there's a lot of times where the way that you arrange those assets may be completely just brand new. You've made a whole new piece of artwork out of the arrangement that you do that hasn't been seen before. And that makes it into something special, because your
And that's
arrangement
what I
makes a
was.
whole brand new kind of game. Like, you've now made a zoo game as opposed to a zombie killing game or whatever.
Very true.
And that's what I was gonna say. It's how you use it is more important than what you're using. Like, I can spend an hour making a stop sign, and it's gonna look identical to everyone else's stop sign because it's a stop sign. It's a red thingy with the word stop on it. I don't need to recreate that. It's gonna look the same as everybody else's. Yeah. It don't worry. Anyone who
Yeah,
anyone who has a problem with that or says that isn't focusing on your game. Your game is what matters. How you use it, the implementation. It won't even be an issue.
that's very true.
Yeah.
A lot of the students I teach too, I'll even remind them, like they'll be working on a scene and they'll say, I have these assets, but I'm not going to use Mexicans or this and that because I want to make that asset. And I'm like, okay, well, what's your interest? What's your focus? Like, what do you want to do with your career? And they'll say, oh, I want to work on hard surface. And I'm like, why on earth would you go and spend time learning foliage? Like, why?
Yep.
Just use the foliage that is free for you right now. Like, skip that step and go to the end. And so it's just really being aware of like what it actually is you want to achieve out of the project, or even yourself or your own learning objectives. Like, it's like Matt was saying, if that's not your learning objective, focus on the things that are your learning objective, so you can use those skills to actually get better, rather than spending time that aren't something that you're really interested in or isn't important to you.
Yeah. Now, if your dream is to become the next Clinton, then maybe you could spend the time making those assets yourself. But if your dream is really not to do that, then by all means, don't waste the time on it if you don't have to.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All fantastic points. Best way ever to put all of that. I thank you for talking on that, because there have been a couple times where I've seen people being a little nervous about the idea of taking asset packs and repurposing them, or even using them for a total asset flip or things like that. And I think it's helpful to hear that it's not only viable, but is in fact something that industry professionals do often use in their day-to-day development journey. I have another question for y'all, and this one's a little tricky, or it can be. I don't know, maybe it's not, and I'm just making it seem harder than it is. But Dio in chat was wondering if there is definitively a right or wrong way of doing things when it comes to learning the engine and picking up different parts of it, because we all know there's like 100 different ways to do the exact same thing. So would you say that there is right or wrong in any way of doing it?
No,
That's a really good question. Cole, what are your thoughts on that?
such a snot. That is my thought, Matt. You are a snot. No, there is no right or wrong way in learning the engine. There is a right way for you for that one thing. And the next time when you're learning something else, it may change. Everyone learns differently, and what works for you learning materials may not work for you when you go to learn lighting. So every time you go to learn something, it may shift a little bit. Learning lighting, you may really, really just gel with one instructor who does a tutorial that's a video tutorial, and it may go really, really well. And then the next time you go to watch one of his video tutorials and you're trying to learn materials, it may just not. You may be like, well, no, this guy is no longer as great as I thought he was. And you may end up finding that you do better with a text based piece of documentation or something. It's really going to be changing constantly. You just have to find what works for you for that piece. There is no right or wrong. It's a personal journey that everyone's going to go on. You just have to find what's going to work for you as you're going, because it's ginormous, and it's really going to be specific to what your end goal is and your personal learning style.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
was,
I
uh,
think you. Oh, go
I
ahead,
was
Matt.
on. I'll let Clinton go. Go ahead, Clinton.
For sure. Okay. Yeah, I was just going to say
Yeah.
that it's also yeah, really important to realize, like, not only is it like based on your learning style and also like observing the situation in which you find yourself, because with, I would say hands down, with games, like at least half of my job on a daily basis and most of the artists I work with is problem solving. That's really what it comes down to. Like, you're going to be problem solving all the time, and there's never going to be one solution or scenario to anything you do. And the greatest part about tech is that not only are you problem solving a solution, but now that solution may have changed from a month ago from when something was different. So there's always going to be so many evolving and moving gears in the process that you just have to be really open to like working with what works best for you at that moment or in that time, and then observing it again later and seeing like what works now better. Like, what can I learn from what we did last time? How can I change how I think about that now? And so really just like kind of evolving, your learning as you go throughout that process is really the biggest thing. But yeah, there's definitely no right or wrong. I think there's always going to be something new and changing with every process.
I I'm gonna trampoline off of both of them because they both said exactly what I was gonna do. But not only with the learning, with like Clinton was saying, it's the implementation as well. It, technically, there may be a wrong way to do something. I'm not gonna say there isn't technically sometimes not a wrong way, but that doesn't mean there's not 5 million right ways to do it. That one's super important to remember, especially because like that's what iteration is. You do it one way, maybe eventually you learn something else, and now you found a more efficient way to do it. You either update the old one or you're practicing, and the next time you do it a different way. Maybe there's 5 different ways that are all literally the exact same efficiency. They're just different ways of doing it. Who knows? That's part of learning. Don't I don't want to be negative here, but like I hang out in the community a lot. I have problems. I like helping people. So like Discord's one of my favorite places just to hang out. It's also honestly selfish because by seeing the problems people have, I can figure out what we might need to cover for learning or how we can improve some of our stuff. I see a lot of the time the community is kind of quick to also jump at people. Like if someone says, "Oh, I'm doing it this way," a lot of the time people are like, "No, you don't do it that way. You do it this way, or this way is more efficient." If you do encounter that as a learner, not everyone's the most friendly. They're not trying to kill you. They're not, trying to bite your head off. Maybe they're right. Maybe that is the better, more efficient way. That doesn't mean the way you did it was wrong. It doesn't mean you have to do it their way either. I see that happen a lot of the time. I'm learning. I'm trying to do something. This is what I've got. It doesn't work right. First answer, oh, you're doing it wrong. You need to do it a completely different way. The learner's like, oh, I did it wrong. I don't know what I'm doing. I better learn it this other way. And then they get sidetracked. They didn't learn anything. don't worry about it. Learning's failing. Learning is winning. Just there's no right way, there's no wrong way, honestly, most of the time. As long as you get it done, learn from what you learned, learn the ways to improve it, iterate, move on. Don't let it get you down, honestly. Just no. No right, no wrong way. Just it's always learning. It's
I'd say
you learn.
yeah,
Yeah.
failure is probably one of the best teachers. I
Yep.
learn more when I fail, as long as you pick yourself up after you fail and, oh, what did I do? How did I fail? How can I fix that?
Yeah,
There's no
absolutely.
there's no right, correct way. It's you have to do what works best for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Completely. Well, I totally agree with everything all of you said. And I do think it's also a good point, kind of similar to what you were saying, Clinton, that the industry and neighboring industries are constantly changing and things are changing, ways to do things are changing, software is always updating and changing. So I feel like the idea of there being a specific right or wrong way to do something is sort of dated in and of itself because it's constantly changing anyway. So it might not even be the right way to do it in a month or two from now. So I
And
think
actually,
keeping
that's a good point on that one because, for example, artists especially have certain ways they're doing things as time goes on, and then technology evolves. You switch over from different types of technology on the GPU, which requires the models to be created differently to make them more optimal for the platform. Consoles being different than mobile devices being different than PCs, and then Unreal 5 is like, oh, you know what? Here's nanite. Screw it. You don't even need to optimize anymore. Just throw a billion triangles at everything. You guys don't need to do that anymore. It's like, yeah, just because it worked a month ago doesn't mean it's going to work again. You're constantly learning and evolving.
absolutely. This is a selfish question now and total tangent, but this is for you, Clinton, based off of that. From
Sure.
the artist perspective, the idea of nanite, did that throw a wrench into things or was that a relief?
I think nanite's amazing. Like it's super cool. We're already using it with a lot of clients, and like I really like using it in the process. But it definitely is like it's a relearning of a process for sure. And like just like what we're talking about here, like what I now know is like what step A through Z as to how to create an asset has now been rearranged completely. So knowing that original step does not mean it's like valueless or weightless. It just means that you have to think about like, well, what letters change? Like, how do we go about those different steps now? And so I think Nanite is amazing because it provides so many more opportunities, especially for learners to just try it. Like, just throw a mesh in, see what happens. Like, see what something looks like in the engine. And so there's a lot more flexibility with that. And then I also think just Nanite with film is just amazing. Like, just seeing what people are able to be like producing right now with terms of quality and things like that. It's just mind boggling. And so many of these artists I've known for years that were like, whether in film or, and something else where they were making these high-res models can now actually see their stuff like real time, which is super cool to be able to see and like even just be able to experiment in and to be able to kind of just get a different perspective on, a different way you're going about creating things. And also just like seeing like, oh, well, I've always been in film. Maybe I'm going to look into games a little bit more. And so it just kind of opens that field a little bit more to a kind of broader horizons for artists overall, for sure.
Awesome. I always was very interested to hear on that because I feel like it was such a big change. I love to hear how it's affected specifically artists as well. Not
Definitely, yeah.
having to worry about polygon counts and all that. All right. Well, if you were up for it, Clinton, there are quite a few questions in here from chat in regards to the learning project in particular, and I was hoping that I could kind of just rapid fire some of them at you.
Let's hear it. Let's do it.
All right. So first one up, this is from Shifty RS. If you have the chance, do you mind explaining how the river is made? They see that it belongs to the landscape, but it's not a texture layer.
Yeah, for sure. Let me. Do you mind if I share my screen again? Is that okay?
Absolutely. I think you might have to restart the. Oh no, there it is. Perfect.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So let's take a look over here. So the water was a challenge, but a fun challenge for sure. And I would definitely say there'd be things that, of course, like we talk about with anything, that I would, think differently about how I went about it next time. But for this particular version of the process, it's all made through using a landscape spline. And so there's actually a spline tool now, which was added in landscapes, that you can now actually add water splines to the mesh as well. And there's also a bunch of cool water tools now that have been added that are really neat. I know there's a few educational lessons on those as well, which is really neat to check out with Epic Learning. But for this particular one, basically it's just a really simple mesh that we have strung along the spline there. And then we basically just break it up with each kind of fall within the change of height and the plateaus of each kind of levee. But the other big thing is ensuring that basically it felt like as you got to certain areas, there'd be more rushing water or more interest within the water itself. And so you have like particles here that kind of demonstrate the running water coming through the overall openings here, and then of course particles that kind of show the water hitting the surface and kind of giving it that kind of more foamy look. And again, like all of this was more developed for understanding and kind of game perspective. But I know there's lots of ways you can tackle this, whether through Niagara or, whatever way that you want to go about understanding, water creation. But this is more of more of an approach that's more simple for when you're starting out to be like, okay, cool. How do I make something simple like water? And so being able to understand that to say, okay, cool. Knowing that I can now come in here and I can manage my splines or, can control my spline pieces. So you can see here, moving that up like this, we can see as the water gets higher, we have, like harsher and faster water flowing, while at the top, when it's more flat, there's still that kind of middle ground of less speed happening with the water. So there's no right or wrong to when you're creating water, but it's just thinking about how do you want it to be perceived? Because, water is definitely one of the more trickier things for sure. So just kind of really observing that and thinking like, what does I need to be able to convince the viewer that this is water, and how can I create the material to demonstrate that? And like I said, there's tons of free content on water. I think there's like 4 or 5 projects alone on Unreal Marketplace that you can download to check out that also have demonstrations of water, which can be really cool. So definitely worth checking that out as well.
Awesome. This I wish you could see chat right now because it's just filled with people freaking out. They really love that. A Rear Tech was wondering what inspired the Western theme in particular. Was it based off of any other games or media, or was it just something that you really wanted to tackle?
Yeah, so I myself have been a long-time Western fan. I really like Westerns. I grew up, my stepdad, he always watched a lot of John Wayne's and stuff like that. So I've been seeing those all my life. And like, a lot of really good Western films have come out recently, Harder They Fall and a bunch of films like that I just was really inspired by. And then also when my wife had our baby, I was on the couch a lot holding her. And so there was always a lot of times where I'm like, I want to play some kind of game while I'm sitting here. And so between Cyberpunk and Red Dead, I think those were my 2 go-tos during that time. And so really just being inspired by, seeing games that are doing it really well and being like, oh man, this is so cool. I love this vista in Red Dead, or I love this in Red Dead, and seeing how those are made and being like, I wonder how they went about doing that. And it's like a few times I would just be like, I'm going to look at this tonight when I put her down to be like, can I actually make that? Or can I do something similar to how they did that? And then kind of just like continuing to experiment with that kind of got my mind going to say, it'd be really cool to make a whole Western scene. And then luckily, Cole and Epic were really excited to kind of pursue that project and make something much more big and showcase how can we make a whole town and educational objectives around that. And so it really just led to, being able to make an awesome environment like this.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Unreal Verse Guru was wondering, does the sample project use world partition? And if not, why not?
Sure. Yeah. So world partition is something a little bit newer. There was a lot more advancements within that kind of process, kind of iteratively through the midway through our process. So we didn't necessarily adapt that for this project, but knowing how it works, it could very easily be applied. Like world partition, I think, is a really useful tool because it's much more useful for the open world scenarios in which you would probably find a town like this. Right now, it's kind of built more like a level structure. So like maybe like a game like that just came out, like say like Evil Dead, or any of those games where it's like a one-off scenario where it's like a level based. This would be more how that would be made. Whereas something like Red Dead would definitely be more useful to actually use world partitions because you basically get a lot more optimization out of it, and there'd be a lot more flexibility for how a team would work on it. I know one of the bigger things that I'd struggle with on past projects on teams was we have this massive world. Like, how do we break up the landscape so that everyone can check a piece out and all work on it and then all come back to the project and it not be screwed up? And so world partition basically helps alleviate those issues and really make it much more useful and much more user friendly for sure.
Yeah, awesome. Next up, Arcane Pacific. Oh my God. Words are hard. They were wondering if you could talk about the process of migrating this into other projects, like in particular project settings to look for, particularly for material settings or things like that.
Yeah, definitely. So this project itself comes with everything in the project. So you basically open it, all the, nothing, everything works right out of the box. But there's nothing here. I try to keep it really simple in terms of like the production style, in which it's not using a ton of doodads and whistles and bells and all that kind of stuff to make it so that it wouldn't function if you moved it to another project. The only primary plugins that we used were the volumetrics to get the sky clouds. That was probably the only one we enabled that was really a big change. And then we experimented with the water. We ended up going with the landscape splines for the final water production. But experimenting with that was really cool to kind of turn that plug in and see what that looks like. So you could easily take this project, migrate it to any other project or production without much worry about anything breaking. Like I said, the sky would be the only thing that you'd probably have to be concerned with to making sure that you just enabled volumetrics within your project. But yeah, I think we even went through multiple iterations of it going from 4.27 to 5 to 5.1. So I know through that experience that, there's always going to be things that you're always looking for to make sure, did this thing carry over properly? What issues could occur? And so far through testing, all of those experiments led to really, fruitful results. And we never had a time where it broke the build, and it continued to integrate to each version of the engine without any problem.
And I can
Yeah.
confirm, because I pulled over like 7 different things out of it, 0 issues, just use a built-in migration, pulled it into my new project, they worked without an issue.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, there you go. It sounds simple. This is good. Next up, Fractured Fantasy was wondering, what is something you learned during this project, or what is the most interesting and or complex part of this project for you?
Yeah, I think one thing I'd always been wanting to tackle was that I'd had a bit of challenge for before was, okay, two of the major thing was, how do I integrate Megascans but make them feel more integrated into the project itself? Like, how do I make it so that it's a Megascan that's really useful, but also how can I make it still feel integrated and feel custom to the scene itself? And so we talk about that in the learning videos as well. But one of the big things is, like, through here we can see, if we go to, say, for instance, like any of the wall pieces here, the stone pieces, as we kind of take these pieces, and if we were to rotate any of these out, we can see that the landscape is blending on top to basically apply the information and the foliage based on wherever it's being placed. And so that was probably one of my big objectives in this scene to kind of work through, is like, okay, cool. We used a lot of the different like virtual texturing and things like that to basically have world-aligned textures and basically have textures that are applied to meshes regardless of their location. And then just figuring out how to like kind of tweak the Megascans a little bit to really just feel integrated within this kind of more sandy landscape comparatively to the original kind of more red kind of sandstone or redstone that they kind of had before. And so finding ways to kind of continue that integration. And then the other big thing, like I said, was the roads. I was just really excited to try to like see if I could figure out how to make roads that worked and blended well. It's always a hard thing when people are first start working with roads, and like, how do I make it feel like it's integrated with the landscape? And how do I make sure it feels like it naturally blends with the road and the dirt underneath of it? And so kind of experimenting and kind of working with that was definitely one of my favorite things, which is something we're going to be talking about later too in some of the learning objectives in some upcoming videos as well, which is going to be really cool to see. So people that are interested in that, definitely keep an eye out, because we'll have some more videos on that. But yeah, I think just like understanding how you can use those tools and those additional features and, the landscape tools to really see, how can you push it even further beyond just kind of like, place an asset. Okay, there it is. It's done. Like, what are the actual tools that can make it feel more integrated?
Yeah, for sure. Very excited to see that talked about in some future things as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, everyone keep an eye out for that. That should be fun and exciting. Another question here from Unrealverse Guru. Which steps did you take for optimizing this project sample?
Yeah, for sure. So with Megascans, we kind of just observed, the size of the texture and how big they were, and then what particular parts of the material that we needed. And then we just kind of reduced it to kind of really what was essential for those parts. And then on our end is really just kind of keeping a keen eye, especially as the tech was kind of evolving at the time between, using nanite or using low poly. And so when we first started the project, a lot of the assets were low poly. And then as we kind of went through the process, we we're learning nanite, we're kind of understanding how to integrate that more. And so I think really just understanding like, okay, what are the limitations of nanite and or low poly, and how do I use them to their best advantage for either? And I think that's why it's still very important, even with nanite, to learn, the old school process of low poly bake downs, neural maps, all that kind of stuff, and nanite. Those are both very useful and very valuable tools. And I think knowing that helped us, go through the process of really ensuring that basically everything we're bringing into the scene is really optimized, and then using a lot of the visualization modes, whether it be through whether we're looking at poly count or base color or light maps or any of that kind of stuff, to really ensuring that our performance is looking good, light maps overlap or lighting overlapping, all that kind of stuff is really useful. There's a ton of really awesome profiling tools as well too that really just kind of help to narrow down and understand, okay, what are the real hitches in our scene that are really causing the most problems, and understanding those as well. It's definitely an iterative process. It's one of those things as an environment artist, it's not the first thing you learn, but it won't be something that you'll be able to get out of your entire career. You'll always need a little bit about optimization at least. And so just kind of dipping your toe in at first, especially if you're a new learner, is really important, just to be like, okay, I'm making this decision. What impact may that have on my overall scene? And how can I kind of circumnavigate that if it's too big of an issue? Is a real first step to take with that for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, the very last question I have in this rapid fire section for the project is they were wondering if there was any particular part of this project that you and your team had a lot of difficulty with, and how you overcame that, if you did.
Yeah, for sure. I think probably the most challenging was the lumber mill. And I think our artist, Abraham, he worked on this pretty much exclusively for a while. And then we kind of worked at the end together on materials and making sure everything looked good, and kind of collectively worked and kind of problem solved some of the nanite aspects. Some of the kind of troubles we came across were, for instance, like, okay, we have a nanite asset and we want to vertex paint it, but we can't have a per instance based mesh be a nanite mesh that has vertex paint applied. So how do we get around that? And so we had to find creative solutions, such as making either larger pieces and then converting those to low poly temporarily, painting them, and then switching them back to nanite. And then just finding kind of creative solutions throughout that kind of entire process to be like, okay, this is the vision, this is what we're trying to achieve, here's the limitations, and how can we observe those limitations but still, reach at least a 90 percentile of what that visual aesthetic that we're trying to get to. And so really just kind of understanding, those limitations up front can be really useful to any artist to be like, okay, what are the tools provided for me? What are my limitations? Now, how do I overcome those and then reach what I'm after in the end, for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for answering all of those back to back for a moment there.
Yeah, of course, happy to.
Now there's a couple other questions that are a bit more general, that I want to go into, and then I have one selfish one that we'll wrap up with after that. But there is a question here that I think would be really good for, everyone, but I think in particular, Cole and Matt. Fractured Fantasy was wondering if you had any advice for those who are interested in aspiring to join the online learning community as a career path. Is this a hard one?
Well, I mean, it just depends on how. Oh, I would love to have more people. My dream. No, I think everybody at Epic, all the teams would love to have more people. That's everybody's dream, though. It really just depends on in what capacity they would want to join the team. Because our team is made up of a lot of different people, so from a lot of different backgrounds. My background is in education, and so it's not in Unreal, whereas everybody else on the team has a background in Unreal and in some way, shape, or form, development, something along those lines, and not in education. So it's really just a wide variety. Typically, when we hire authors in to do courses and content for us, they are very specialized in whatever it is that they're doing a course on. So when Clinton does content for us, it's because Clinton's an expert in what he's doing content for us. So it just really depends on what they're wanting to do as far as working alongside us.
Awesome.
I'm gonna say first off, yeah, I'm a traditionally programming background. That's my enjoyment in history. Um, but I also apparently have been told by everyone who knows me that I like telling people what to do. So that's kind of where that came from. And honestly, I like programming. I like learning. I like learning. I have a problem. I like to continually learn stuff, and particularly things I enjoy, like video games and programming. And Unreal Engine kind of it happens to be both, which is kind of convenient. I've been using Unreal since Unreal came out. Like not anything, just literally the game Unreal, and it came with Unreal Ed, and you got to play with it and figure things out in IRC, some random weird chat program back in the day. But it got to the point with this one, like if you're looking for advice, honestly, just do it. Just do stuff. You have to be doing things. You can't just. I mean, maybe you can just randomly start off in exactly the position you want and then learn it and go from there. But generally, you just have to do things. I have a very selfish goal for the way I do the learning and the teaching and the programming is I actually I don't know the nice way to put this, but like I just don't want to deal with people. It sounds weird.
That's
It
not the
sounds weird.
nice way
Just
to put
give.
that, Matt.
I know. Just give me a second. I
Uh,
like to make sure that the stuff I'm teaching or showing, the stuff that people are learning, is done in a way where they don't have any questions, where they're not going to be like, well, then I don't understand. Can you tell me more? So, like I said, it's not the right way of putting it. It's more of just the fact that I don't want to have to. I can't. There's no right way to put this. My
you
brain
take a
understands the
holistic approach
concept.
to education.
Yeah, I don't. I don't want to deal with the customers. I want
Stop,
them to
stop,
be
Matt, stop. You're not
self-sufficient.
helping. You're not helping.
I want them to become self-sufficient. It's like one of those
Uh,
things where it's like, you know, the dream. You're sitting there in front of the class and you give your presentation or you give your speech or you give them the information. And at the end of it, there's no questions. You've given them everything they need to go on with their stuff. It's a way, and my goal is if no one ever has to actually ask me any questions because all the information's out there, I've accomplished my goal. If everyone can become self-sufficient because there's enough good learning material out there. And that was my goal, like when I first started with this, was like people didn't know how stuff worked. I could figure out how it worked. I could put it in a way they could understand how it worked, and then they now know how it worked. And then I just repeat it infinitely. I know it's a
We
wrong. There's no better way of putting it. I just it is what it
I
is.
think we got there. I think we got there at the end.
we do
Yeah.
look for authors in a lot of different places, though. If they're looking to do content creation, we look for authors for our own content on the Epic developer community site, like community content creators. We look through content there to see if there's anybody who's creating stuff that's really amazing, that we might want to tap as authors for content that we're creating, because what they're doing is really resonating amongst the community already, and we want to bring them in to do authoring for us. We also look through other channels like out on YouTube, just out in the world. We are constantly looking for authors out and about wherever we can find them. People who are doing great things already that might be potential authors that we could actually utilize for the content that we're trying to create.
And it goes
yeah.
back
So,
to just do it.
yeah,
It's
if they're already
yeah.
creating stuff that resonates and is good quality content, then if we happen upon it and find it, then there's potential that we will hopefully maybe reach out to them. But
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead,
I think
Clinton.
two words of advice I got from an instructor when I was younger, and I was like kind of interested in education as well too. Like I was like, I kind of think I want to get into that. It seems pretty cool. Like I like that aspect. He said two things you got to have is you got to have constant curiosity. You got to be curious the rest of your life. Like you got to be, I want to explore this. I want to learn this. I want to understand that. And the other thing is you got to be happier seeing other people succeed than yourself. And I think that was something I'm always going to remember. Like I always think, like, do I find happiness, or do you find happiness if you're interested in that, in seeing others succeed? And if the answer is yes, then you probably would make a good instructor, because that means you're very interested in seeing their success and their growth. And I think that's really the important part about being an instructor, for sure.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
for our team, especially, that's really our bigger goal. It's we are constantly trying to learn. Like when Matt said earlier that we eat our own dog food, or he called it dog fooding. We eat our own dog food. It's because we are constantly striving to learn. As a team, we are learners at heart. It's constantly part of what we do. We set aside time to learn and really focus on the learning aspect, not just because we teach, but because we are learners. We want to learn. We're constantly hungry for learning, learning, learning. But we also are very, very focused, not because we don't want them to ask us questions or deal with people, but it's because we don't want them to need to ask us questions, because we want them to succeed. We want our learners to be successful. It's why we wanted to make sure we had a project for people to be able to explore with, because we want them to have that feeling of success. We want everyone to be able to have a win and to have something that they can feel really empowered with, because you constantly want people to be successful at what they're doing. And that's really, I think, what drives us. We want our learners to feel like they can do all of the things with the engine. Anything that is their goal, we want it to be our goal for them. So I think that's really, really an important point, Clinton.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I have two final ones. One that is from chat and one that is my selfish question that's just for me because I want to know. But the
What about
one
it?
from chat, if you can, this is a no pressure question, but if you uh, can you give us some insight into what kind of tutorial topics the community might be able to look forward to?
Oh, I can do that. So we have one or two coming soon-ish, in the next year, actually breaking down the making of the Northwoods Old West project, as everyone knows it, kind of showing a couple of key things kind of behind the scenes. So we'll have that coming out in the next year or so. And then there'll be another one from Clinton as well. We've got one on sequencer coming out. We'll have an updated your first hour to go along with 5.1, because we're a little behind on that one, along with a new learning kit with some special little pieces in it. We're very excited about that. A sequencer course. Trying to think of what else we've got coming up. We're going to have some fundamental courses and our foundation courses in the works. That's kind of where we're going to be focusing, is really on the foundational stuff, trying to build up that foundational library for UE5 and 5.1, 5.2, that kind of thing moving forward. So I think materials is the next big foundational piece that we'll do.
That's awesome. I know
I,
that one will
I'm
be
just
really useful.
I'm just awestruck that Cole just announced 5.2 on a live stream.
Well, I mean, I'm just going in order. 5.1 has
I
already
know.
been out. Eventually 5.2 will come. 5.3 will follow that, I hope. Then
Be a
maybe
Windows
5.4.
style. Skip to 8. Skip to 8 or
Yeah.
12 or whatever you want.
5.52 will eventually come,
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll throw a wrench in there. We'll
Yeah.
just suddenly announce UE6 and it's going to be oh,
Oh God, no, I'm not ready for that. I'm not, no, please, no. I'm not planning UE6 content. We just started on our 5 collection, Tina.
Yeah.
I'm not
But I
ready
think,
for a
like,
brand new interface. No.
one of our focuses for this year and going forward is getting that fundamental stuff, the getting people started as frictionless as possible, which is why she mentioned the learning kit. It's something I created because we have a lot of projects. Like Northwoods is freaking amazing, but it's a bit overwhelming if you're just trying to learn, I don't know, how to move a block in the level. It's a bit overwhelming. So we worked to get a small little kit, small size, small context, small focus, with all of the key fundamentals in there for the fundamentals. So as we start doing the fundamental courses, we'll have consistency. One project where you can actually learn all the fundamentals of the engine, where it's focused, it's consistent, and we get you in and get you out as frictionless as possible. And hopefully at that point you'll know the fundamentals, and then you'll be like, I'm gonna make something really cool. You download the Old West project and you just flood the whole thing. Now that you know where the water is at, you just flood the whole thing.
Hopefully.
Awesome.
And the
Always
learning kit has some of the assets from like Stackabot. I had to make sure I didn't say Slackabot again. Stackabot, stuff like that. But every time that we've pulled
Yep.
into it to use some of the things that are already there, but we've just pared it down a little bit just to be just enough for what we would need, so that we're not overwhelming. But then you learn the foundational piece, and then you can go and play in the Old West project. So you learn that materials is my word of the day. You learn about materials, and then you get to go and apply it in the Old West project. You learn about lighting, then you go apply it in the Old West project. So we teach you in the safe space, and then you get to go and explore on your own in the safer, bigger playground place. It's kind of the hope.
awesome. All right. Well, to wrap us up for today, I have one final question for all of you, and that is, if you had to condense all of it down, what would be the main goal that you hope people can take from this learning project?
Well, I'll go
It's a
first
tough one.
since
I'm
everyone else
coming in with a hard
seems to thought.
question.
Well, I was gonna say, because all three of us have used it, I think it's important, and this is something a lot of people don't know, especially when they're starting out or trying to learn something, is iteration, iterate. That word is very important when doing and learning. Clinton mentioned it a bunch of times. I mentioned it a bunch of times. Cole mentioned a bunch of times. It's important. You're just do it wrong, then improve it. Do it differently, improve it. Just do it. Get it done. Iterate, iterate. The everything you do, just iterate. It's important. Learn what iterate means and do it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think when I was working on the Gears team, I think one of my favorite phrases that we always use was "Don't be precious," and that's basically going back to iteration. Is that there's going to be so many changes that happen when you're working, especially as an artist on your project, that don't get attached so much that you can't understand that the criticism coming in are not directed at you. The criticism to try to better the project, better the team, better yourself, better your learning, better your objectives, better whatever it is you're trying to achieve. So you can't be precious about those things. You just got to be like, okay, I'm just going to let go, and I'm just going to continue to understand these people are giving me creative criticisms, or I'm seeing something is being told to me I should be doing it a different way, and like I need to objectively think about that, and how can I, whether integrate that in my own workflow or think about what that means to what I've learned so far and how that's going to continue to let me grow. And so really just kind of opening yourself up to allow criticism, but also understanding that it's only there to better you and make you a better artist in the long term.
Absolutely.
Okay.
What about you, Cole? You got any thoughts on that?
So I'm going to go with perfection is the enemy of good enough. I am a perfectionist by nature, and so I struggle to just let go sometimes, and I want everything to be just right. And so sometimes I have to learn that it's okay, that it's not exactly the perfect thing, that it's okay if I'm not always able to just get it on the first try, or the second try, or the 15th try, or at all. Sometimes it's okay for me to just walk away, because sometimes you just have to do, like, oh, I don't understand this today. Like, it's okay to let yourself just walk away from something. And maybe that's just not the thing you're going to understand today, or you're going to be able to get just exactly like you want it to be. It's all right. The world will not end. You're not going to die because you did not get that box in the exact spot you wanted it to at that exact moment. Like, it's okay. You just have to keep trying. Just keep trying.
The tips for learning Unreal Engine, the stuff I showed you in the little tutorial we did, there's a reason why Cole was technically not in charge of it. She told me what to do, but she didn't really have the final say on how it ended because it never would have came out. It
Mm.
she's yeah. I mean, yeah, at a certain point, it's good enough. Especially, and here's the best part about this. Honestly, it's a practice project. It's a learning project. It's what we used and iterated on to grow. So it doesn't need to be perfect. It is what it is. It accomplished its goal, and then now it will be used to springboard up to the next thing that will be done, and it will be better, and it will be iterated on. It won't be perfect. We'll just work on tweaking something else, maybe figuring out, for example, issue I ran into was getting TAA to not blur the media plates. I've got a nice little thing on my list to look into figuring out for the next time. Practice and move on.
Yeah, you just
Yeah,
have to pick your battles.
Yeah, to that point
absolutely.
too, I think it's really important to kind of realize, like, people think like, oh, as I go further in my career, I'll have more time for perfection and things like that. Nope, it's the reverse. Further you go in your career, the less chance you have of perfection. The more things are up in the air all the time. So I think that's something I wish I would have been told earlier, to be like, oh, it's not going to get easier. It's just going to get a little bit more confusing in how you work through those problems for sure. Like Cole was saying, it's like there's going to be times where it's just good enough and you got to move on to the next step.
Yeah. And you just have to give yourself it's okay. It's all right. That's a thing that I learned. I've learned it. It's okay. It doesn't have to be exactly the perfect. It's fine.
I've 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 watched interviews with actors and they mentioned that they don't know how their role was. They didn't watch the movie that they acted in. And I never
Right.
understood that. But then I slowly realized as I did more and more content, I edit it, I make sure it's good, I make sure it's valid. I never really watch it once I'm done with it. Once my content's done and it's good, it's in the place I want it, I don't just sit there and watch it again because I don't. I moved on. It's good enough. I moved on. I didn't need to watch it. I don't need to
Right.
watch myself.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all. Fantastic advice for everyone. Good to get the kind of the concise final thoughts on all of that. So, I think that'll be all the questions for today. I'm not going to hold you hostage for any longer. I've already done it for 2 hours and change. But thank you all so, so much for taking the time to come be on the show today and talk to us all about this incredible project, these incredible tutorials, and just all of this material that you are giving to the community to truly dive in and learn some cool stuff and make some cool stuff. And cannot thank you enough for taking the time to go through that with us today.
Glad to do it. Thank you for having us, Tina.
Of
Yeah,
course.
definitely.
And then, of course, thank you everybody who came and watched the show today. It wouldn't be what it is without you and your interaction. Asking your questions, being involved is a huge part of this. So thank you all so much for being here as well. If you missed any part of this stream, no worries. We post all of our streams in video format on both our YouTube and Twitch channels after the fact. And I highly recommend that you watch all of this one because there's so many wonderful little gold mine bits of information. So make sure you go back and watch the VOD if you missed any part of the show today. You can also follow us on all social media at Unreal Engine, as well as come say hi in our forums where you can get all of the latest news and updates, as well as get all of the links associated with today's stream, including where you can find the Old West Learning Project, the tutorials, and the assets and all of that. So make sure you go download, play around with it, check it out, and let us know what you think of it too. Please interact with us on the forums and everywhere else. Let us know what you think of all this, of course. But with that, I will see all the rest of you next week for the next episode of Inside Unreal. And you three wonderful people, one last big thank you from me to you for coming on the show today. Very much appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Of course. All right. Bye, everybody.
Hi, everybody.